All right, so let's make a start. Firstly, thank you very much for taking the time out today to attend this webinar. It's something that I'm really excited to hear about because I've got two young children. Let me just introduce you to our speakers. First of all, we've got Joelle Maurice from the University of Birmingham. She's going to be giving us a rundown of Birmingham University. Obviously all about the university, the courses available, etc. And then we'll be passing over to Scott Hood of QB Partners, and he's going to be talking us through the university costings, how much it costs to send your children to university, etc. Obviously we'll be doing a Q&A session at the end, guys. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to either put them in the Q&A section at the bottom of the Zoom or put them in the chat function. Joelle, I'm looking forward to this. So I'm going to pass over to you to start with. And I know you've got a presentation ready, so I think you can start sharing your screen. And like I said, guys, if you've got any questions, don't hesitate to put them down in the chat function. Cheers, Joelle.
Thank you very much. Yes, hi everyone, I'm Joelle and I'm the International Officer for the University of Birmingham. So I represent the university overseas, speaking to prospective students who are looking to come and study with us. So this presentation is going to be a whirlwind snapshot tour of Birmingham and some sort of studying in the UK as well. So first of all, I'm just going to give you a brief overview of the city of Birmingham, because obviously the University of Birmingham is located in the city of Birmingham. Many of you might be familiar with Birmingham. We are the UK's second largest city and quite centrally located. And we're a real mixture of sort of older architecture and new architecture as well. So centrally located in the UK, and it takes about 1 hour 30 to get to London. And we do have our international airport as well, so you can easily get to other parts of the world from Birmingham. 2022, Birmingham is going to host the Commonwealth Games, so that's this summer. We're all very, very excited for that. And the university is actually working in partnership with the Commonwealth Games. So some of the sports are going to be hosted at the university. But it does mean for the region and for the city that there'll be a lot of activities and things going on beyond 2022. The city in general has quite a large and ever-growing number of young entrepreneurs and startup businesses. And the university is actually very involved with that, so driving innovation and collaborating with businesses. So employment opportunities in the city and in the region are very, there's quite a lot of employment opportunities for our graduates. Birmingham is a very multicultural city. Around 30% of the population are from ethnic minorities, and in practice that means that you see people from all sorts of different cultures. And we've got, I mean, my favorite thing about Birmingham in that respect is that just the food scene here is great. There's so many different restaurants and cuisines that you can try, but there's also lots of different like festivals and celebrations that take place throughout the year. We are also the youngest city in Europe, with around 40% of the population under 25. So that of course means then that there's lots of things in the city geared towards young people, and it's a sort of quite a buzzing place for young people to be. But we do have the largest financial and creative districts in the UK outside of London. HSBC recently moved its UK headquarters from London to Birmingham. So we are an important city in terms of, as I've already mentioned, the job prospects. And we do find that around 48% of our students stay in Birmingham following graduation. So it is a really great city to be in. Moving on to the university. The university is what's known as a red brick university, which you can see from hopefully this picture, the beautiful red brick buildings. We were founded in early 1900s. The campus is quite a beautiful campus. We've got these wonderful red brick buildings, but then also lots of green open spaces. And then our centerpiece is Old Joe, which is this character, the clock tower in the center. Great for sort of orientating yourself on campus, and he lights up different colors for different events throughout the year as well. And you can see in the background of this shot the city. This slide just shows where the university is in relation to the city. So we're about 3 miles to the city centre. and it takes 7 minutes on the train. The university's got its own train station, so you've sort of got the best of both worlds in terms of all of this, the beautiful campus with all of the facilities in one place, and then very, very easy access to the UK's second largest city, and all of the facilities and amenities there. These are just some stats about Birmingham. So we are quite a large university. We're one of the largest universities in the UK. We're not the largest, but around 40,000 students in total on our campus, and around 10,000 of those are international. So I've mentioned that the city is a very multicultural city, but the university is also a very multicultural university, both in terms of the students and the staff. So we've got over 150 countries represented on our campus. We are ranked globally in the world's top 100 and within the UK top 20, and those are sort of fairly consistent rankings. So we are a highly ranked, very well regarded university. And we are one of the most targeted universities in the UK by top employers. So that's employers wanting to come onto our campus and meet our students and employ our graduates. We work very closely with our students throughout their time here to ensure that they're developing skills that employers are looking for. And then throughout our time, we've had 10 alumni and staff recognised as Nobel Prize winners. So the research that takes place at the university is sort of international calibre, internationally recognised and world leading. And we've been involved in some quite sort of big name projects throughout our time. We are investing £1 billion in our campus over 10 years, and sort of part of that investment is what you can see in the background of this photo, which is our Green Heart development. So we sort of re-landscaped the centre of campus and opened it up into this beautiful area. So it's a space for students and staff and also the local community to enjoy. And through COVID, it's really been a blessing because it's meant that we've got this really great sort of socially, so easy to socially distance space for students to spend time in. But we use it for festivals throughout the year. We have an open air cinema on it sometimes. We have like lawn games going throughout the year, depending on the events. We have market stalls that come onto campus. So it really is a fantastic feature of the centre of our campus. And then we've also been investing in new buildings and facilities, so that you can see the library on the right of this photo is that gold building on the right. And there's a range of other buildings as well that are all part of this sort of investment in our campus. So we are a 276-acre green campus estate, and we are rated among the top 10 campuses in the UK. We've got our very own train station and a range of other facilities on campus, including a geology museum with our own dinosaur. And everything is on one site. So you've got, of course, all of the academic facilities, but then you've also got banks and shops and restaurants and medical practice and a bookstore. And it's all in a very sort of safe, secure and friendly environment. Our accommodation is guaranteed for the first year of your studies, and they are sort of halls of residence, apartment style halls of residence. So you have your own study bedroom, and then either private or shared bathroom facilities, and then things like shared kitchen spaces and social spaces. We offer either catered or self-catered, although all students will have access to a kitchen. There are some sort of private flats and family accommodation available, but that is limited and not covered by the guarantee. And all of our accommodation comes with 24-hour hub and security. We have all sorts of facilities within the accommodation, including places to store bikes, and there's like supermarkets and places to eat and bars and things. And it's all within a 5 to 30-minute walk from the centre of campus. So the one that's shown in the background to this slide is the Vale, and it's based around a lake, and you can see the clock tower as well. So this accommodation takes about 10 to 30 minutes, depending on where you are, to get from the accommodation to campus by walking. But the university is located in a residential part of the city. So there's loads of private accommodation available nearby as well. And so that would typically be in, sort of private houses. And usually students spend their first year in university accommodation and then move on into private accommodation for subsequent years. This is a final aerial shot of the university. So some of the key features on this photo, you've got the sports centre in the bottom right-hand corner, and the sports pitches as well. The triple domed white building that you can see towards the back is the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. So that is the largest teaching hospital in Europe, and that is just a 5-minute walk from the campus. And even closer to the medical school. The medical school is right next to that hospital. So yeah, it's a very beautiful green campus in sort of the residential leafy suburbs of the city. So studying at Birmingham, we have so it's a large university, and we've got 5 academic departments. We have the College of Arts and Law, we have the College of Engineering and Physical Sciences, we've got the College of Life and Environmental Sciences, we've got the College of Medical and Dental Sciences, and then the College of Social Sciences. So within those, we cover a whole range of sort of traditional academic subjects. It's almost easier to sort of talk about the subjects we don't cover. So we don't do things like veterinary science, architecture, and fine art, but other than that, we've got a whole range of sort of more traditional academic subjects. This slide just gives you an overview of education in the UK. So typically an undergraduate degree would be 3 years, and there is the option to take a foundation year before those 3 years. And so that's for students who don't meet the requirements for direct entry. So the undergraduate degree is typically 3 years, but sometimes it would be 4 years. So usually there would be the extra year would be sort of between years 2 and 3. You'd have a year abroad or a year in industry, or some of the courses include things like clinical placements as well, which might extend it into the 4-year period. A master's degree is 1 year, and some of our undergraduate degrees, particularly in the engineering side of things, have the option to include the integrated masters. So that would be a 4-year course. So you're not saving any time by doing it, but it's one application at the beginning of 4 years. And at the end of 4 years, you come out with a master's qualification. And then the PhD is typically 3 to 4 years. So 3 years of research and the final year writing up. And then there are some courses that fall outside of this. So things like undergraduate medicine, dentistry, veterinary and architecture, and others can be longer. So some of those are sort of 5 to 7 years at undergraduate level. And some master's degrees, particularly in sort of clinical side of things, might be 2 years in length. But that's what your typical education would look like in the UK for higher education. So the University of Birmingham is part of the Russell Group. So many of you might have heard of the Russell Group. It represents around 24 leading UK universities. And the majority of world leading and internationally excellent research that comes out of the UK will come from Russell Group universities. And Birmingham is actually a founding member of the Russell Group, and it does sort of have parallels to the US Ivy League in terms of its prestigiousness, if that's a word. The thing that I would mention in terms of how that impacts a student's learning experience at a Russell Group university is that it's particularly, so your first year is usually getting everyone up to the same level. But then years 2 and 3, then you're delving more deeply into the subject. And so particularly in years 2 and 3, you might be having the opportunity to be studying this research that's taking place at the university. You're being taught by the people who are doing the research. If you're doing a dissertation in your final year, then it might sort of have ties with the research that's taking place, and the supervisors that are sort of helping you along with that, again, are the ones that are doing the research. So you're really sort of at the cutting edge of what's going on in terms of new research. At Birmingham, we're focused on research that matters and has an impact on society. So we're doing things like researching how to combat cancer and how to tackle the energy crisis. And we're also looking to sort of challenge the stigma of mental illness and help with things like the refugee crisis. I'm also going to talk very briefly about our campus in Dubai, because the University of Birmingham has a campus in Dubai, and we're not alone in the UK in sort of having an offshoot campus in a different part of the world. We were the first global top 100 university to establish a campus specifically in Dubai, and it has been done in partnership with Dubai Knowledge and Human Development Authority. So it's located in Dubai International Academic City. So this might be an option, is sort of, if you don't fancy coming to the UK, is looking to see what branch campuses there are across the world. So why might you come to Dubai? So it is a global top 100 university, and we do have quite generous scholarships for Dubai. So when I'm talking about the fees later, they don't necessarily apply to Dubai, or they do, but then the Dubai campus has got scholarships up to sort of 40% available. There are exchanges available to the UK campus, and you can do that without adding any extra time onto your degree. And it's a great location because it's obviously a bridge to 3 continents. And our campus is brand new, so it's a state-of-the-art campus. It's purpose-built, it's modern, and it's also a smart campus. So we're working in partnership with Siemens to make it a sort of a smart campus. These are just some photos of Dubai. I'll run through them very quickly. So our brand new campus has opened this year. This is our purpose-built campus, and we're moving the students in now currently. These are all, it's so new, we still haven't actually got up-to-date actual photos of the campus. So these are all the sort of computer generated ones still, but I'm told the computer generated ones and the real thing look very, very similar. So it's a really, really fantastic space in the way that it's been put together and sort of thought out. And I haven't managed to visit it yet, but hopefully I'll get to visit it in the not too distant future. And this is one of the sort of indoor terraces as well. They're having sort of indoor spaces for the students. So now I'm on to the slightly drier end of the presentation, the fees and finance, which I won't be covering in too much detail, but the fees are listed on individual course pages and in students' offer letters. So they currently range from around £20,000 to £27,000 per year, but certain courses do cost more. So medicine, for example, is one that costs more. At the University of Birmingham, the fees can be paid in full each year or in instalments. So we would accept instalments once a month or 3 times a year. I've been asked to cover fee status because apparently there's lots of queries around fee status. So those fees were the international fees. The fee status does depend on more than just your nationality. Factors include how long you've been resident outside of the UK. So you usually need to have been resident in the UK for the 3 years prior to the course for non-educational purposes. It depends where you're paying taxes. But the links that I've listed there are on the UKISA website, the UK Council for International Student Affairs, and that provides quite useful sort of self-assessment guide for you to look through and see if you think you would be eligible for UK or home fees. It is the PDF at the bottom is a very long document. I tried to sort of think about how to summarize it, but couldn't even begin to do that. So it's worth having a look through and seeing if you think you fall into the home fees categories. These are some scholarships, examples of scholarships that we might be able to offer at Birmingham. So typically our scholarships would be partial scholarships, and they are currently sort of mostly departmental dependent, so up to about £3,000 in the first year, and then £1,000 or £3,000 in subsequent years, depending on the subject. Or we have our Middle East and North Africa Outstanding Achievement Award, so that's for the first year, £2,500. So they are partial scholarships that we tend to offer undergraduate students. In terms of the application process, if you're applying for undergraduate, you need to be looking at UCAS, and UCAS is a fantastic resource because it's got all of the universities listed and all of the courses listed. And when you're submitting your application, it's just one application that goes to 5 different universities. So you don't have to write 5 different applications. The UCAS has got sort of the entry requirements, but also individual universities will have their entry requirements on them. And you'll need to write a personal statement. So when you're talking on the personal statement, for a university such as Birmingham, around 75 to 80% of the personal statement needs to be focusing on why you want to study this particular course. So it's focusing on the academic area, your academic background, perhaps your career aspirations if they're related, and any personal interests or related work and volunteer experience that's related to the course. You may or may not have these as so volunteer experience is not an essential side of things, but if you have done some volunteer work that is related to your course, then it's worth talking about it in the personal statement. And it's talking about what's piqued your interest in the course and what particular areas and subjects at school that you've enjoyed. And then about 20 to 25% of it can be your extracurricular, unrelated extracurricular, which you would talk about perhaps the great team working skills that you've developed in your sports, or the great communication skills that you've developed. So it's about what you've learned from those extracurricular activities. So you apply through UCAS, and the UCAS deadline is the end of January each year, although it is earlier for courses at Oxford and Cambridge, and medicine and dentistry. And then your schools and agents can support your application. So your school should be fully aware of this process and able to support you through it and writing your applications. Generally speaking, we look for A-levels or the International Baccalaureate. They vary by course. So we range from ABB at A-level to A-star AA. And in the International Baccalaureate, it would be 32 points overall, with 655 at higher level, all the way up to 766 at higher level. We do accept a range of other qualifications from across the world. So we've got full information on our country pages on our website. So we sort of have all of the countries listed and whether or not the qualifications from those countries would be acceptable. But otherwise, we also have foundation programs, and the University of Birmingham offers its own foundation program that's taught on campus. It's a year in length, and you can progress to nearly all of our courses from it, depending on which stream of the foundation you take. So there's 3 streams, and so if you're interested in going into engineering, you'd take the engineering and physical sciences stream, and then you'd be able to progress on to sort of mechanical engineering, for example. All students need to prove their English language ability. This is true of students whose first language is English as well. So we do accept things like IELTS, TOEFL, Pearson, but we would also accept IGCSE, GCSE, the IB standard level English. So they're all acceptable ways to prove your English language. Yeah, I've got a bit about the visas now as well. So you will need to submit so when you're applying for your visa, you need to be able to show that you've got the maintenance amount in your bank account. So that's £9,027 currently for the year. And you need to have both the maintenance amount plus the first year of tuition fees in your account for 28 days prior to your visa application. And if you don't have this, our visa application centre can alternatively accept sponsorship letters or loan letters. The UK has a points-based immigration system, so the student route visa requires 70 points. So 50 points comes from the CAS, which is the confirmation of acceptance of studies, which the university will issue to you once your offer is unconditional. 10 points is meeting the financial requirements that I've just spoken about, and 10 points for the English language requirements. The visa cost is around £350 or £475, depending on where you're applying from, either outside or inside the UK. But on top of that, you also need to pay for the immigration health surcharge for the entire length of the course. And that health surcharge means that you would be able to use the NHS. So that is For a 3-year undergraduate degree, that would be £1,645 at the point of applying for the visa. And then you may have additional costs around vaccines and things as well. When the university makes an offer, it will usually be conditional, and in order for it to be an unconditional offer so that you can get your CAS, you would need to do things like meet the academic requirements and submit all related documents. It might be that we ask for translation of documents, and meet the English language requirements, and also we would look for a passport to be submitted as well. Things like A-level results and IB results are communicated directly to us, but other results you would need to send them on to us. And I think that's it. There we are. So thank you very much for listening. I do hope to see you in Birmingham if you decide to come this way. And if you were interested in getting in touch with me, those are my details.
That's great, Joelle. Thank you very much for that. Really interesting. And also we will be circulating this presentation to everybody as well. So we'll be able to circulate the presentation so you can get all of the contact details, and more importantly, those links to see if you are UK resident or non-resident for fees purposes. So that'll be really interesting to look at as well. Okay, so thanks for that. We're now going to pass over to Scott from QB Partners. He's got the really nice job of presenting to us how much all university is going to cost. So I can see him laughing there. Scott, over to you.
Thanks very much indeed. I'll just bring my presentation on now. Okay, hope you can see that. Okay, wonderful. So thanks very much indeed. I'd like to start with a quote, if I may, because we're going to get into the finance of everything. So from over 200 years ago, Benjamin Franklin said, "If a man empties his purse into his head, no man can take it from him. An investment in knowledge pays the best interest." So what I'd like to do is spend a bit of time looking at these investments into knowledge and seeing what kind of dividends they might pay. Most of the presentation will be focused on university funding, but the same principles will broadly apply to school funding, school fees funding as well, but often the timescales will be shorter. In addition, with school fees funding, many of those students, of course, will want to go on to university, so it's equally important to them as well in the long term. So a large part of what makes up the likely cost of the university fees and the living costs are where the person is looking to study. Now, there might be a number of different factors in that. There might be a particular destination which is attractive, like Birmingham, as we've seen, or there might be cultural, linguistic, family ties to a particular destination, but a large part is also going to be the quality of the education. So having a look at two different surveys here, the QS World University Rankings 2022 said that 9 out of the top 10 universities are in the UK and in the US. The Times Higher Education World University Rankings put 10 out of the top 10 in the UK and the US. So these are obviously going to be the popular destinations for students to travel. The other destination, by the way, was Switzerland. So what I'd like to do is have a quick look at some estimated living costs for those destinations. If we look at Switzerland, first of all, then out of 196 countries ranked on this particular survey, Switzerland came third with a cost of living of around about $2,500 US a month. The US came in 10th place and the UK came in 12th place with an average living cost for a moderate lifestyle of just shy of $2,000 a month. I think this is probably the first point to mention about a warning about averages. I saw a great quote the other day that the interesting thing about averages is that they hide the truth very efficiently. I think what's important here is your number. What's important is the destination that you're choosing to go to in your circumstances. But for today, I'm afraid I'll have to work with examples and averages. So as we can see, quality universities correspond with, on average, higher living costs throughout the world. So if we look then at an example here of a full-time international student that was studying for an undergraduate degree, and as we saw earlier, that's usually going to be 3 years, for a class-based subject, let's take the figure there of £20,000 per annum for that course, for the tuition fees, plus let's allow an additional £10,000 a year for living expenses. I know the figure on the previous slide was higher, but sometimes students can have lower costs. So for example, in the UK, many people have to pay a council tax to their local authority, which could be maybe for a single person, £75, £100 a month, but students are usually exempt from this. So let's work on a figure of £10,000 a year, and then inflate that cost to what the cost might be when your child, your son or daughter goes into education, higher education, in 5, 10, or maybe 18 years' time. So in 5 years, if we inflate that cost to the cost at that time, you really need to look at a sum of around about £123,000. In 10 years' time, £157,000, and in 18 years' time, over £200,000. So these are much larger numbers, but we've got time to get there. And of course, they're based on assumptions about how costs are likely to rise in the future. And that's what's really important, to get a good understanding of what your particular numbers are for the destination that you're looking to go to. So as we get there, of course, in our plans to save and invest for the future, it's also worth thinking about what happens in the meantime. So if you are looking to fund your child or to go to university in the future, it's important to protect your income, protect your family against things like death or the loss of your income through illness, because that can have a disruption on your ability to fund that education in the future. But when we're looking at advanced planning, saving and investing allows a lot of ability really to avoid high interest rates from borrowing to go to university at a later time. When I'm looking at saving and investing here, saving, I'm really looking at regular saving. So this is putting aside a certain amount of money each month or each year in order to hit that target in however many years' time. When we're looking at investing, that's really where you have a lump sum now to invest with the aim of reaching that future target. So let's just look at some very basic investment principles. These are things, though, that you would discuss much more in depth with your financial advisor. So where savings goals are more than 5 years away, it's often worth putting cash into investments that might help the money go further and keep up with rising prices. There are 4 main asset classes that your financial advisor will talk with you about. These are typically cash, where you invest in deposits, savings in the bank or the building society, shares, equities, where you buy a stake in a company, property, where you invest effectively in a physical building. That might be residential property, that might be commercial property, and also fixed interest securities, sometimes called bonds, which are a loan to a government or a company. And generally, spreading your money between these different asset classes within your plan to pay for education funding in the future can reduce the amount of risk and to your overall portfolio underperforming. In addition, it's always important to keep a sum of cash ready for the emergencies today. There's no point being able to fund for a university cost in 15, 20 years' time if you can't fix the car next week. So it's really important to keep that money on deposit. So as we look then into how to achieve those sums to pay for university in the long term, here's an example of an investment where those target figures we looked at earlier are £123,000 in 5 years, £157,000 in 10 years, and over £200,000 in 18 years' time. In order to achieve those figures, you would need to invest today, assuming a growth rate of 6%, around about £85,000 to £100,000 today in order to hit those targets in that time frame. As you can see, clearly the longer you've got to invest the money, the less you have to invest today, assuming those growth rates. Clearly those aren't guaranteed. And it's a similar picture as well, where you look at investing on a regular basis, perhaps every month. If you're looking at saving in advance, you would look for an 18-year target of £233,000, maybe putting away £600 or £700 a month, assuming a growth rate on those investments of 6%. The shorter the term, the more you would need to save today. So for a 5-year target of £123,000, the figures come up at around about £1,900 a month in order to hit that target. So just to reflect then as to why we're doing all of this, well, purely from a financial perspective, graduates earn more. Looking at this survey from Statista from 2022, the results for non-graduates in 2020 were that they earned less than both graduates and postgraduates, in some cases by considerable margins. So if we look there at the non-graduates average salary, that was around about £25,000, whereas graduates can stand to earn on average about £10,000 more. So again, there are many, many reasons for going to university, but just purely on the finances, graduates do tend to earn more money on average. Now, where QB Partners often come in helping financial advisors and other financial institutions is around the tax considerations of planning for investments for the future. So I think what we need to look at here then is that when going to university, especially as an international student, there might be 3 or more locations. The first location then is home. That's where you start, if you like, and it's important to consider the tax considerations on investments in your home country. And the main taxes to look at there would be income tax, taxes on capital gains, and also taxes on inheritance. So in some countries, for example, there might not be any of those taxes. In the UK, there are all 3. And sometimes people's assets are located in a different country to either where they live or where they intend to study. And so it's really important when speaking with your financial advisor to choose an asset location which is compatible in terms of those taxes with both your home destination, your home country and your study destination. And those are the 3 taxes that are important to focus upon. The UK does have all 3 of those taxes, as I mentioned. So there are some products which are particularly more tax efficient than others. And again, it's worth talking to your financial advisor about which is the right product for you to save in order to provide those education fees in a tax efficient way. And finally, as I mentioned, just briefly on school fees, these are some example numbers from Dubai. The main issue I'd say with school fees is generally they're going to come first. There's less time to save for those fees, but broadly the principles, the same principles apply in terms of investing and saving for those fees. But I would say an additional consideration for school fees is whether the grandparents can help. And again, it's important to look at taxation for the grandparents and again assess the grandparents' country in which they live against the destination that the student is intended to study to make the most of any tax efficiencies there. So I'd say thank you very much indeed for listening. I hope that's been helpful in helping you think about how you're going to achieve the target for your child's education. But I will stay around for any questions and answers afterwards. Thank you very much.
Cheers for that, Scott. Really interesting. As somebody who pays fees in Dubai for 2 children, your averages there are below the fees.
Okay.
What we have in the Middle East is we have a lot of the old school schools that aren't allowed to increase their fees that much every year. Yet we've got so many new schools in the Middle East that they can come in and charge whatever they want. And yeah, it's very expensive. Okay, thanks a lot for that, guys. Really interesting. We haven't had any questions. Oh no, we've got one Q&A come in. Okay, so this is a question for Joelle actually. So Joelle, minimum criteria to qualify for scholarships in the UAE and Birmingham. Is there any criteria?
So the scholarships in the UK, they do vary from year to year, and they are sort of generally, in Birmingham at least, they're generally sort of funded directly from the academic departments. They tend to set their own criteria. So I'm going to assume you're looking at A levels, and so for A levels we would generally look for maybe like AB as a minimum to be considered for some of our scholarships, but some of them would have a criteria of AAA or A star AA to max. So some of them are like that you get the lower amount with the slightly lower grades, and then if you're getting top grades, then you get the higher amount. For the UAE, for our Dubai campus, so the scholarships again tend to be based on academic excellency, and so we would be looking for, most students get a 10% discount because we have sort of early application bonuses and things like that at the moment. But then on top of that, you can get a 10, 20 or 30% discount, so totaling up to about 40%. And again, that sort of goes in increments. So AAB would be about the lowest, and A star AA at the top end, probably for the 30% scholarship.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thank you. We haven't had any other questions coming, guys. So what we'll do, we'll wrap it up there. We've been going 45 minutes. Oh, no, we have. This always happens at these webinars. Okay, once we start to say questions and wrapping up, then people will start asking lots of questions. Okay, so a question from Alexander here. This is for Scott, really. You mentioned about the tax situations of the university, the home, etc. Can you just give some examples of how that could work?
Yeah, certainly. So I'll start with, I think, two examples, really. The first one, I think, is where you're looking at grandparents funding their grandchildren's education, especially if they're looking to do, especially if the grandparent, for example, is either living in or kind of in the net of an estate tax or inheritance tax where they live, and they might be looking to do some intergenerational planning to pass wealth on to, for example, their grandchildren. So it can be particularly effective to use exemptions and allowances for the grandchildren to fund those to fund that education planning. That might be in the form of paying the school fees directly or university fees directly, or perhaps making a lump sum gift directly to the children. It's going to depend on the jurisdiction, but that's the kind of thing I'm thinking about there. In addition, for parents, for example, who are living in perhaps a jurisdiction where there are no personal taxes, like say the UAE, it's really important that their savings are also in a jurisdiction where they're not paying tax that they don't need to. So that might be locally in the UAE, or that might be in a third jurisdiction where their funds can grow free of any additional taxes, and then consider, well, when the funds are drawn down, what taxes are going to be payable at that point, and where are the funds going to be located. So, for example, if it's in the UK, making sure that money can be taken out to pay the university fees in a tax efficient way as possible.
Okay, great, thank you. And just quickly as well, the inflationary figure that was mentioned, which I think was 5% earlier, Scott, is that specific? I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask you, is that specific to education?
No, not at all. So it's really important, absolutely spot on to ask that question. So it's not specific to education. It applies to the living costs as well, and all of your other financial planning for the future. It's really important to keep an eye on what the costs of things will be in the future, to make sure that your investments and savings keep pace with that.
Okay, great, thank you. All right then, so we haven't had any more come in, but I bet we will in the next 15 seconds. So as I'm wrapping it up, obviously just on behalf of Holborn, guys, both Joelle and Scott, thank you very much for presenting this evening. Really interesting stuff. Like I said earlier, everybody that's here will receive a recording of the webinar, and if you found some of the links useful, which I know I will personally in Joelle's presentation, you'll be able to obviously look at those links as well. So with that, thank you very much, guys. It's been a pleasure to host you, and I wish you all the best, and thank you everybody that turned up this evening or this afternoon. All the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for hosting. Thank you for having me.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you.